In November 2022, I published a video overview of Philip Walker Harding's game Monolith, a game in which players draft 3D polyominoes from a shared area and use them to build their own blocky monoliths. Now, this is a style of game that I have encountered a lot recently, and I mentioned two of those games in the Monolith overview, Queensland and Spots. I have since played Tribes of the Wind. This also has that style of play, a genre that one BGG user dubbed take and make, because you take stuff and you make something. So you make your own thing. That's the important part. It is your own thing that you are making. And all of these games have that. And I thought I'd talk about the games in broad terms, but what I was mostly curious about is a bit of focus on the player interaction in these games, or rather, the lack of it, where often they seem like they're one thing, and then you look in a little more detail and you see, like, I'm playing a game with people, but am I really having any effect on what they're doing? Can I change their course of play through my own actions? Maybe, a bit, kind of. It's pretty minimal. And I wanted to talk about that because it's a very popular style of game these days, and I just thought I'd look at it in more detail. I find it fascinating that it is so prevalent. I guess that it is kind to people that you get to make your own thing and have other people not mess with it. It's not really what I want in a game, but it's out there a lot. So I thought I'd look at some of the player interaction, starting with Queensland, a design by Matt Wolf and published by 999 Games. This combines drafting and tile laying together. If you played Carcassonne, then you will be familiar with the concept of tile laying, where you're building something, a large area, but in Carcassonne, you're all building one shared area and trying to carve out pieces of it for yourself. In Queensland, you get to build your own farm. Each player in Queensland starts with an identical set of 4 tiles in their player color, and over the course of the game, you are going to add tiles to it, matching all of the edges so that you can expand your wheat field and your sugarcane fields and grow something that is profitable. At the end of the game, you are going to score your largest completed sugarcane field, 2 points per tile. This one is not complete, so it does not score. So 6 points here. Wheat fields are 1 per tile, so 6 for that. You also score for sets of tractors, scarecrows, and sheep. They are on a number of the tiles that you draft, and once you've scored the fields, well, you can tear apart your area and combine like tiles and see I've got 4 tractors, so that's 5 or 4 points. Sorry, 2 or 4 points, depending on whether I'm in a 2-player game or a 3 or 4-player game. Writing this upside down here. And 1 each of these, that's worthless. All right, you score 1 point per lake. That's most of your points, but not all of them. You're going to score some during the game, and you're going to possibly lose some as well, because I have left out the most relevant aspect of this game. It is called Queensland because it is set in Australia and during a time when Australia imported cane toads to try to take care of a beetle infestation in sugarcane, and the toads ignored the beetles and overran the countryside. You are going to have to try to handle all of the toads that are invading your farm so that you end up with a nice looking place. On a turn, you are going to draft one of the 3 tiles available, and the tiles are going to come with 1, 2, or 3 toads, depending on what you take. So I can take this one and I can match it as I wish. Here, here, here. Of course, you're trying to build up areas, so maybe I want to add it to this field here, but this tile comes with 3 toads, and this tile has a double arrow on it. So after I place this tile and after the toads go on top of it, all the toads in my farm move 2 spaces this way, east on the compass. So 1, 2, there we go. That's not great because you don't want toads, but you can also score for eliminating toads. You are driving them away. You are eliminating their presence from the countryside, and you're rewarded for doing so. So the other player is going to take their turn. I'm going to ignore mostly what they're doing. If they put this here, this arrow points up. So the toads do not move. They do not go off the edge of your farm. If they went this way, same thing. If it went down to here, same thing. Right now, the arrow is only pointing away. You don't get rid of those toads. So if I take this one, this tile I can put here. It comes with 2 toads on it. All the toads move up. So these 3 go here and jump in a lake. These 2 hit the border and don't move at all. Now your goal is to get toads into the lake, because apparently you just want to drown them. I'm not exactly sure if that's what you're doing, but you are doing something where the toads are no longer there after being in lakes. I'll just say it like that. So here's where we get the one of 2 interactive elements in the game. You've got tiles that have a single arrow, tiles with a double arrow, and tiles with this gray arrow, which depicts lots of little people by it. When you take a tile that has one of those arrows, it's going to come here like normal. All the toads on my board are going to go this way, which is south. So they go here. This one doesn't move because it's in a lake and because it's in the edge. Once you get something in a lake, the toads do not move. The other player, all other players have the option to also move their toads south. So you choose these cardinal directions. You don't say up or down, left, right, anything like that. You want to stick to cardinal directions, because however these tiles are oriented on the table, they're moving south. So you have to have tiles placed so that they're always in this orthogonal grid. Does this player want to move tiles south? It is their option to do so. This is one of the 2 interactive elements. When you take a tile with this type of arrow on it, the other players may, if they wish, move their toads. Okay, that's it. If you get 5 toads in the lake, you remove all those toads, glub glub, and you score 5 points. If you end up having 6 or more toads in a lake, they're also removed, but you get only 3 points. So you want exactly 5 toads at a time, drowning, and that's it. So you're going to keep taking turns, and you want to complete features. Maybe you want to go here, you get this wheat field, but when you do that, you get 2 toads, and the toads all move up. So now they're all bunched up here. And over time, maybe you can place something else. And then all the toads go this way. And then next turn, you're going to do this. No, that doesn't quite work. But they all go down. But now you've got one single stack to move around as a bunch. And ideally, you can plop them in one of these lakes, and then they will be removed. You are going to keep taking turns until the supply of tiles runs out. There will be 2 tiles left. Everyone has taken the same number of turns. You have some arrangement of tiles out here. Let's see if I can make something sort of fast. Here, here, and here. The number of tiles you draft is going to differ depending upon the number of players, because you use all of the tiles no matter what the player count. But at the end of play, let's say we don't quite get 5 in this lake, and this one ends up here, and these end up down here, and so on. We end up with something like this. At the end of the game, first thing you do is, this is scoring during the game, first thing you do, who has the fewest toads? They get 3 points. So you count up all your toads, 3 points. Who has the fewest toads? -3 points. That is the other interactive element in the game. That is the other time at which you see what other people are doing and care about them. After that point, after that comparison for most and fewest toads, you remove any tiles with toads on them from your farm. They've got toads on them. No one wants those. No one's going to be impressed by those. They do not score. And that affects the rest of the scoring because you've just thrown away a number of tiles. You have possibly disrupted your sugarcane field. This was complete before with 5 tiles in it, and now it's not complete. So my largest complete one is this with 2. I have no complete wheat fields at all. Nothing. So my score drops for this, It drops because these tokens, these symbols have gone away. I remove lakes. Your score can plummet a lot based on the number of toads you have left. But you are pretty much in control of where all those toads end up based on what you draft and where you put them and how you move them over the course of play. There you go. Whoever ends up with the highest score wins. There's a rundown of how to play Queensland, which I played 4 times on a review copy from 999 Games with 2 and 3 players. The game is for 1 to 4 players. Have not played solo, but it sort of feels solo as you're playing with 2 to 3 players because, as I mentioned, you are each building up your own thing. And all that's going to change with more players at the table is the number of turns you take and the number of opportunities you have to move your toads based on what other people take. But it's optional. You cannot force someone to do something they don't want to do. So if I take a tile and it gives you the option to move things, it's not going to hurt you. It will at best help you push toads along in the direction you want. The first time we played Queensland, I will confess, I misread the rules and we thought it was a forced move, and that added a really interesting element where I'm drafting a tile that I might be indifferent to relative to everything else, but I could force you to push toads in a certain direction, which felt good. I'm thwarting you and possibly wrecking something that you're trying to build. But that's not how the game works. It's optional. So at best, when I draft a tile, it's affecting only me, or if it's a all-player tile, it doesn't help you at all. So you decide not to use that movement. That's the best case option. Worse, it helps you. And so maybe I don't choose it. It's almost a level of negative interaction because looking at how you can benefit from my choice of action, I'm not going to make it. I might pick something else instead. There's a lot of other things to consider because, of course, you are trying to build up the fields and you're trying to collect sets of icons and you're trying to move the toads in the right way in order to eliminate them. And once you have some large complete area, you don't want to mess that up later in the game, so you keep trying to push toads out to the perimeter and away from whatever is complete and is going to score so that you can maximize the points. But that's pretty much all on you, with the other player actions only giving you the option to do better. And you got that final comparison for who has most and fewest toads, and that's it. So together but separate. There you go. It's definitely well done. It's a well-designed game. I think it does exactly what the designer wants to do. I mentioned Matt Wolf lives not too far from me, and we played games together a number of times. I think this is exactly what he wanted. It's a style of game that is very popular, just not so much to my taste, because I like having more of a handle on what other people are doing and measure, trying to ward off other people as they put their hand on my back and try to push me a certain way. I want to try to overcome that. But that's not what I'm talking about today. I'm going to talk about now John Perry's Spots out from CMYK, which is an action drafting game. You trying to satisfy your own dogs. Here's the starting setup for a 2-player game of Spots, with each player getting 2 dogs at random from the shuffled deck. You each have a treat and a doghouse. You each roll a die and put it in the doghouse with a player with the highest number going first. Here are 6 action tiles, and this is the suggested set of 6 tiles for your first game. The rulebook contains other sets of action tiles. There are 16 more available. You always use the 2 red actions, and you can use one of the suggested sets or just take 1 action of each color at random and you're good to go. Your goal is to be the first player to score 6 of your dogs, and to do so you must cover their spots with dice. On a turn, you are going to choose an action and carry it out as best as you can. If there are multiple parts, then you do them in order. So if I choose this action, I first roll 2 dice. Get a 1 and a 4. If you can place those dice on your dog, you do. Okay. And then I may roll 1 die. You don't have to, but you have an option. And why you want to sometimes not roll dice is because if you can't place it on the dog, it has to go in the doghouse. And if your spot total goes higher than 7, collectively, then you bust. Let's say I roll the die. 3, perfect. Goes on here. This tile is done. Flip it over. It's not available. The next player now takes their turn. Let's say they do this one. If you have fewer than 6 dogs, draw the top one and add it to your pack, and then roll 1 die. You have lots of options now. Pretty much anything should match unless you roll the 1 number that's not there. Now it's in the doghouse. We go back to my turn. I have only 1 die available. I do not want to bust. I can perhaps take 1 treat and then take 1 more treat for each hard dog in play. They've got these little dog paws here. Like this one has 4 spaces to cover. This has 3. If this player took treats, they would get a lot of treats, but I took this action. It's not available to them. Maybe they take this action. Roll all your buried dice and then place them or rebury them. 6 and 5. Sure, let's do this. You may roll 1 die. Another 6. Done. I've got a choice of 2. I only want to fill this 1 spot. Maybe I don't want to do this. Roll 3 dice because at least 2 of them will end up in my doghouse and possibly cause me to bust. Maybe I take this one. I roll 8 dice and then choose the number that I rolled. Oof, I want a 6, but I don't want 4 6s. You have to take all of a number that you rolled and either place it or bury it. I could choose 3 and bury that. I can't choose 4 or 5 because then I'd bust. You can spend a treat and you re-roll all the dice that you just rolled. You can't pick and choose. So I spend a treat, I roll it again. I got exactly 1 6. Boom. If on a turn, during an action, you have covered all the spots in your dogs, you immediately score them. The dice go away, these dogs flip over. I now have Mayor and Missy and Ma'am in my collection, and you get as many dogs as you just scored, up to a limit of having 6 dogs total. You can't ever go above 6 in your collection. This action I just took. When there's only 1 action available, you put a treat on that action, and then all of the actions are available. And this player goes. Let's assume, well, let's not assume. Maybe I can make this happen. I'll roll 3 dice. I'll choose this to get a treat. And put those out. 5, 1 and 5. Ooh, those don't work too well. Let's spin a treat. There we go. Perfect for my example. 2, 5, and 6. You may roll 1 die. You may repeat this as many times as you want. So I can roll. I get a 1. Can't place it. Go here. Let's roll again. 4. Can't place it. I can stop or take a chance on busting. I have only 1 reroll available. Let's just stop for my purpose of my examples here. This player is going to go. Maybe they don't need to draw a new dog. Let's use 8 again. 8 dice. I'll choose 3s. I got a 3 and a 3. There are no other 3s. Nothing gets buried. Done. If you want, on a turn, you have all of the spots covered on a dog. You can choose to score, but you score only the dogs that are complete. So this player could spend their entire turn scoring this dog. They flip it over. Rupert is complete. Put it to the side. They draw 1 new one because they just completed 1. And that was their turn. Took no action. So you can press your luck and try to complete lots of dogs at once and hope not to bust with whatever you roll extra. Maybe it's going to work out for you. Or you can do it the slow and steady way, where now this player's got lots of options available again. Maybe they're going to take this and have a fourth dog available that they're working on. We'll see. You keep going until someone has 6 scored dogs, at which point they win the game instantly. Now, if you notice, I have my dogs, I'm working on them, you have yours, and nothing that I do here affects what you can do. It affects what action is available, but it could have been taken. I'm going to take some action probably, and it could have been taken at random and just not there. So I'm rarely going to choose an action specifically because of what this player can do. Sometimes, I've played 4 times, sometimes you'll choose an action that another player might want, but pretty much you're not going to take an action if it's potentially going to hurt you. If I have only 1 spot available, or if I'm like this, I'm probably not going to take the roll 3 dice option, especially if I'm close to busting. I'm not going to do that to hurt you just because it's better for you. I went through all the actions here, and there is literally only one of these actions out of the 22 in the game that references another player. For each of the paws on your dog cards, you may raise or lower any player's buried die by 1. That's it. Otherwise, they're all different action possibilities. So let's see, here's another purple, green, blue. I'll just show different options available. You'd have to pause to actually read them because I'm going through very quickly. Roll 1 die, you may repeat that. Okay, with 1 more die. So you roll 2, you roll 3. Okay. Roll 1. If you buried the die without busting, take a treat. All the green ones relate to treats. I assume the blue ones all are similar as well. I have played only with the starting set because I keep introducing new people to the game. So, starting set it is. Race to 6 dogs, see who wins. There's an overview of spots, which I played 4 times in a review copy from CMYK with 2, 3, and 4 players. And the only difference I've noticed with differing player counts is the amount of time between each of my turns. You have more people at the table, you have more of a weight between each of your turns, because what someone else does on their turn has no direct effect on what you have available to you. Nothing's going to change with the amount of dice in your doghouse, the dice on your dogs. You're going to have a differing number of actions available, as I explained, but you're probably just choosing whatever's best for you without regard for what's available to me. So with 2 players, you can have a bit of a plan. Maybe I'm going to take this action and hope to take this other one next if you don't take it. Maybe. But with more players, it feels more random in terms of what's available, and I'm just going to make the best choice for what's out there at that time. Maybe with more experience, you could plan more, but still, with 4 players, 3 other actions are going to be taken before your turn comes back. And sure, you can count ahead a bit and say, well, if I take this now and everyone else does something, then the tiles will all be freshed when my turn comes around, so then I can have my choice, and so I can plan a little. But again, I'm not affecting what happens to your dogs, at least not directly. I mean, maybe that's a good thing. You do your thing with dogs, I do my thing, and we'll see who works out best. But it all feels very indirect and almost accidental interaction, because, again, my choice of an action tile is going to be what's best for me, probably not affecting you or thinking about what you want. It's just going to further my potential for winning. And if it hits you, well, that's an accident. You really wanted treats and you can't get them. I was just doing it for me. I'm probably not doing it to affect you. Maybe I'm not a high-level spots player and looking ahead, planning out all those future turns, just going directly for scoring the dogs and that's it. I'm not sure. But the game works fine. It's just isolated in that I do my thing and you do yours. It's very much that style of play, which I've seen a lot. Now, Tribes of the Wind does something a bit differently where it feels feels more interactive because my choices often affect other players, but it's almost like accidental interaction. Here are some of the components of Tribes of the Wind, which is more involved than the other two games, so I'll stick to a rule summary so then I can talk about the interaction among players in this game. You have the somewhat standard market area, as in many other take and make games. You have element cards and forest tiles and village cards, and players are going to draft these over the course of the game. Each player gets 5 element cards at random from the deck at the start of the game. On a turn, you're going to take one of 3 actions. Mostly, you are going to be playing an element card, assuming you meet its requirements. You then carry out its effects. There are 4 types of effects, and they will help you develop your personal player board. This is the make element in the game. You can remove pollution from your board. You need to do that so that you can develop it and fill it with other tiles. You need water to pay for the tiles. The forest tiles come in adjacent to where you already have a forest. You have to keep removing pollution so you can keep building, paying water to do so. You can move your wind riders to areas on the board, and when a tile has all of its spots filled, you can take one of the other 2 actions in the game. Aside from playing a card, you can build a village. These wind riders return to the capital. You flip the tile over. In this case, this one causes pollution in the adjacent spaces. Not all tiles do, but some do. So you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. You've now built a village. This one lets you slingshot a wind rider somewhere in your area. And you continue play. You keep taking turns until someone has built their 5th village. And at that point, you finish the round, and then you have 1 more complete round, and then the game ends. So there is a racing element to the game where you are trying to build up your villages and possibly be there first because you get a 5-point bonus for being first. Aside from that, you want to ensure that you finish whatever you set out to do. When you build a village, you are going to draft a village card, and you get either an immediate bonus or a long-term objective. So you want to make sure those are complete, assuming you take those. You are trying to build up lots of tiles to score points. You are trying to remove as much pollution as possible to score points. The third action you can take is to discard any 3 of your cards to put out a temple. There's scoring for temples as well, and temples give you an effect as listed. You choose which temple you want to play, and you carry that out. Okay, let's get back to the cards. So on a turn, you are going to play one of the cards, assuming you meet its requirements. And I'm going to put them all face up now because it is easier for me to see what I am playing. You are going to see the backs of other players' cards. You don't know what's on the front of them, but in general, every blue card is going to provide water, and every red card is going to remove pollution, and the green one will help you build, and the yellow will give you movement for your wind riders. So you know what action possibilities players have, what effect possibilities rather, but you don't know whether they can actually play these cards or not, because there are requirements on each card, and you must meet the requirement in order to play a card. For example, this one here says you must have 2 blue cards in your hand, and at the moment you don't. You have 1, so you cannot play this card. This one says you must have no yellow cards, so you can't play it. This one says you look at your neighbors. Do you have more green cards than one of your neighbors or both of your neighbors? So in a 3-player game, you're looking at the other players. Do you have more green cards? No, you have 2, and this player has 2, and this one has 3. So you have more than none of your neighbors. You can't play any of these 3 at this moment. This one, does a neighbor, one of your neighbors, have a yellow card? Or do both of your neighbors have yellow cards? Well, one neighbor has a yellow card. You could play this one, and you get 3 movement points. This one, you look at your hand and your 2 neighbors' hands. How many yellow cards are in play total? 1, 2, 3. So you would take the top action. You get 2 movement points. So right now you have 2 options for what you can do. You could choose one of them. You play it. Let's say I do this. I get 3 movement points. You then draft one of these cards here. Maybe I want to take a blue card because now this one can be played. Maybe I want to take a green card because then this one can be played. I'd have more green than this other player. So each turn you're playing a card and drafting, and there is an interactive element to what you can play or what effect you'll get based on what other people have. It's not always the case because sometimes you get cards that relate only to what you have. So I can play this now. I've got 2 blue. Let's say I want to hold off on that though because I want to get this green. I'm going to skip all these players' turns at the moment. Let's say I play this one. There's still 2 yellow cards in play. I draft a green. This one again, do I have more green? Do I have more green? They're the same type of card. I have more green than one person. So I can build for 5 or I can build for 5. Those are the same. I've got 2 blue, but if I play this one, then I don't have more green than this player. Of course, these hands will be cycling around as well, and they will be changing over time. What's interesting is there's an interactive element to all the choices you're making. Let's say I do this one. Let's get a red card finally. I'll show you one of those. You're looking at the number of red cards in play. 1, 2, 3. So this lets me remove 1 pollution. Let's say I play this one now because I've got no yellow. And then I can get another red. Now this is checking. Do one of my neighbors have red? Both of them. Okay. There's also cards in here. Let's say I can't play this one. Oh, I should have played this when I had 2 blue. I messed up the timing of my plays. I should have played this first, drafted a red, played this next, and then draft another red. There you go. So there's lots of choices in terms of how you want to play things and play them in the optimal order. You're also relying on what other players have, which is not really up to you. You can draft cards or not draft cards with the hope that the player following you will then pick something, but it's not necessarily going to happen, so you have little control over what's going to be in their hand. You have to play based on what you think is going to be in their hand next time to affect what you can play next, but you don't always know whether that's going to carry out or not. So it's almost like this indirect interaction because we're interacting with one another, but you don't necessarily know what I'm trying to do. This card says if I have less yellow than one neighbor, I get this. If I have less yellow than both neighbors, I get this. And right now, I don't have less yellow. Oh, sorry, I've got less yellow than this one. I have fewer yellow cards because I have 0 and this player has 1 and this has none. But if this player plays yellow on their turn and drafts a non-yellow, now I can't play this card. So they can hurt me. They can keep me from doing things, but they don't even know they're doing it. So it's very indirect interaction. It's weird. It's frustrating sometimes because you can be planning to play this and then someone else plays something and stops you from doing it without them even knowing it. So I can still play this. I could still play this. I can't play this. So I've got 2 options right now. Well, I've got 3 options as long as this player keeps this. So you're trying to flow through all the cards in your hand and play them the best way and get the maximum effect. I want to get more red cards or hope that other people get red cards so that this becomes more powerful. But I have no control over other players drafting red cards. I have no control over other players putting a red card in their hand. When I pick up this red card, am I going to get this type of effect or this type of effect or something else? Oh, this one says, actually, if I have fewer green. I had no idea. I don't know what red I'm going to get. I know I'm getting a red effect, remove pollution, but I don't know what the requirement is. So it's very indirect in terms of how you are interacting with one another. Maybe I'm going to take a card you wanted purely for that color, and then I get hamstrung by whatever the requirement is that comes out. More blue than one or both neighbors. That's not more blue than this one right now, because it counts the card that you're playing at the time. You can be drafting forest tiles. There's generally less competition here because they're sort of similar in terms of the effects they're getting. They require 2, 3, or 4 of your wind riders. Maybe they make pollution, maybe not. There's less focus here than on the cards, and there's more focus on the village tiles, village cards, but you get these only when you build a village, and you can see where other people have put their wind riders and whether they're close to getting a village or not. Are they trying to cover all their radioactive, their nuclear facilities on their board? Are they trying to place villages in these spots? Are they placing a temple here? Are they making a vertical column of non-matching forest tiles? So they need one of each color working towards this. Maybe you can take one of these if you see someone building it up, and then you can take the immediate benefit, denying them these points. So there is some drafting you can do here, but you need to be able to complete a village to do that. And of course, is it more important to stop someone else from doing this or to take something that you are actually trying to build up and score? It varies depending on what you're trying to do. But the main focus, the thing that people have really talked about for this game is the card element. Oh, here you go. Red having fewer blue than one or both neighbors. Is this interactive element, and yet it's kind of out of your control. Where you get more control is in the 2-player game, because in that you are going to have your own hand of cards, the opponent's hand of cards, and the central aisle here serves as the other neighbor. So here, if I'm looking, do I have more blue than each other neighbor? Well, I have less than here and I have less than here, so I can't play this card. But as I'm drafting blue from the middle, I am depleting the neighbor directly. I can more directly affect my choices in the 2-player game. I have some control over what's going to happen here, because of course the other player is going to do the same. This card we haven't seen yet. You look at the number of blue cards among you and your 2 neighbors, and you take this effect X times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I get 7 water playing this card. And I have more blue than both of these neighbors. It took me a while. Hopefully I was playing other things. I wasn't paying attention to what I was covering, but it was happening. This one, I have fewer yellow than each of my neighbors. Again, I can more directly affect whether yellow is here than I can in a game with more than 2 players. So the 2-player game gives you more control. It's still not complete. The opponent will still mess you up by drafting something, by playing this and then taking something, and now you hurt them. They hurt you without you even knowing it. But there you go. I played Tribes of the Wind 3 times so far, and I copied borrowed from the BGG library, once each with 2, 3, and 4 players. And the selling point of the game, aside from the fabulous post-apocalyptic environment illustrated by Vincent Dutray, has been this unique card interactive element where your choices of what you are playing are affecting and affected by what your neighbors are doing. It is a neat concept, but in practice, it's kind of interesting how my choices affect you without me even knowing it. I don't know whether I'm helping you or hurting you because I don't know what the requirements are on the cards that you hold. So it's interactive, yet not. It's almost like when you're riding on the freeway and someone cuts in front of you and you were hoping to advance ahead or go somewhere else or do something where, of course, they're affecting you, but they didn't mean to. They've got their own goals and they're doing their own thing and are oblivious to you doing anything. They know there's a car behind them, but they're not thinking about the person in the car. And maybe, did that person want to pass me and go ahead? Do I stay back because someone might pass me in the future? No, you're doing your own thing. And yes, that will have ramifications for other people, but it's very abstract in this sort of gaseous way that molecules all bounce around and affect one another and hit one another and cause collisions, but no one's intentionally doing something against someone else. They just have their own agenda. Whoosh, and you're shooting on there. You're going to affect whether someone can play a card or not and not even realize it. Do they have a card where they want a neighbor to have a blue card? Do they want to have more blue cards than me? Do they want to have fewer than me? I don't know what your requirement is. So I'm affecting you, but accidentally, I ordered the last piece of cake in the restaurant. Now you can't have cake. I mean, it's a very odd thing. And then you have the third action in the game, which I mentioned. You can play a card, you can build a village, or you can put out a temple. And when you put out a temple, you discard 3 of your cards and then draft 3 new ones. All at once, you can't look at them one by one as you draft them. You draft 3 and put them up. So someone planning, they were slowly building, trying to do something. And now you do a temple action and your hand is 3/5 reset with possibly new colors. And now everything has changed. So people have to reassess their options. Often you're looking at your rack of cards. I just dropped over the rack that I was trying to demo here, where I'd often have, well, these are the ones I definitely can't play at the moment. And this is maybe, but not great. And these 2 are, yep, I can do that. So, okay, well, I'll do this one right now. And then that shifts this over. And now I can do this one because, okay, and now we're going to draft this other one. And you're slowly going to shift your hand over time as you're getting this idea of what can be played and what can't be played. Now what I picked up at random was play this if there's no green, so I can't play. Play this if there's 2 red, can't play. This if there's 4 red, 4 to 7 red among me and all of my neighbors. Okay, this one, I didn't show you one of these before. You need 1 of each color. Can't play this. This one also needs 2 red. This is the only one I can possibly play. And it depends on my neighbors, and they have no idea. So probably going to take a temple action and then reset. Go from there and see what I have to play with from that moment. So interaction against this sort of uncaring otherworldly force. It's an interesting element. I mean, it's a very common design feature, a type of game that has become very prevalent on the marketplace. I have talked about Cascadia before. I did an overview of Cascadia. It's really not my style of game. And these sort of continue that trend where it's this indirect, accidental, negative interaction where I just want to do my own thing. And hopefully you don't mess me up. And maybe you do and maybe you don't. Maybe you help me out, as in Queensland. Maybe you take the action I want. But who knew? You're just doing your own thing. And hopefully I can make it through all those indirect actions and find success. Who knows?